It's Season 2, Episode 2 of Grocott's Male Sports Writers Block. Once again, I'm Shaun Goosen, and alongside me is our esteemed sports editor, Stephen Kisbey-Green, as well as Garfield Khanyile, sports writer extraordinaire. Today we'll be touching on the Super Rugby franchise's performances in the competition thus far, as well as just looking ahead to the Springbok Test series against the English to come in June. Well guys, overall the Springbok, or South African challenge in Super Rugby this year has been rather underwhelming. Other than the Bulls, there hasn't been really any real improvement of any of the franchises, and again, it doesn't seem that there will be a winner from the Republic once again this year. Garfield, overall, have you noticed a step up in quality at all from our franchises in 2018?
Well, Mr. Goosen, I have to contradict you there because you said that it's only the Bulls that have shown improvement, but I believe that the Durban franchise, the Sharks, have also shown a great improvement in terms of how they perform against New Zealand-based teams, simply because over the past we have been able to compete with New Zealand-based teams on Super Rugby level, but as times have changed, we have seen them struggle a lot, and not just them, but other South African rugby franchises as well. But this year, something has changed. I mean, they had a very successful tour to New Zealand, giving one of the greatest games of the season against the Hurricanes. So I believe that the Sharks, should they keep up their lap-sided form, then I think they can be real contenders for the Super Rugby title this year.
With the Highlanders this weekend as well in Durban, so that's a good opportunity for them to get another one over them. Steve?
If I can just interject there, the only issue that I see with the Sharks at the moment is they've got a very similar problem with the Lions, and that they only seem to fire against these big name teams, these New Zealand teams and the top South African sides. They are the bottom of the South African conference at the moment, and the reason for that is because when they come home from their amazing tour, they go out and they play dismal rugby. They just need, I personally think all they need to do is work on their consistency, and I think that's Robert du Preez needs to take a step up and be like, okay, yes, it has got to do with my my conditioning. We've conditioned them to play in New Zealand and play fantastic rugby in New Zealand, and then when they come home to Durban, where they should be better, they're worse. I just think that the Sharks could be, maybe not this year, but in the next 2 years, on paper they have
the same squad and continue. Okay. Garfield, you talked about the Bulls. Under John Mitchell, they have improved this year. What have you made of their campaign thus far?
Well, what I've seen with the Bulls is that it was actually quite surprising for me, considering the fact that they lost Jan Serfontein, who was quite the intricate part of that Bull squad, leading them from the inside center position. But as we see, like, the Bulls have provided a big explanation to that any South African side can improve under the correct management. Because ever since John Mitchell stepped in, the Bulls have shown that they want to play South African winning rugby, and that they have been doing. And of course, any change takes time, so we're not expecting them to be title contenders in just a year. So, as Mr. Steve mentioned, in the same 2-year time frame that the Sharks will have to improve, the Bulls will have the same time frame as well. And then in 2 years' time, we'll be talking again about the fact that the Bulls being #1 in South Africa, possibly.
And we see what he did with the Lions when he was in charge. Apparently he's had a lot of man management and life coaching since then, and he's obviously really looking to improve and stop falling out with his players. Steve, we know how busy you are, and we really do appreciate you coming down here and sharing your thoughts with us. The Lions haven't been quite at the same standard this year as we've come to expect over the last few seasons. They're second overall and do lead the South African Conference by virtually unassailable 11 points. Are they still genuine title contenders though?
Well, firstly, you say it's virtually unassailable. I don't think it is unassailable. I think the Bulls are playing some fantastic rugby at the moment. The Stormers, as dismally as they have been performing, they still have that shot of stepping up. Khaleesi needs to set up as a leader again. And then once he starts playing his game properly, and he starts leading the side properly, they can beat the Lions, and they can go above the Lions. I don't think the Lions are unassailable at this point, especially considering how, as you said, they're not playing as the rugby that we were used to them playing under Ackerman. it is true to say that they've lost a couple, one or two players, obviously with the likes of Ron Ackerman, who was a big enforcer in the side. Creel to injury, Whiteley's been injured most of the time. Combrink has been back for I think 4 weeks now, so he's still finding his form after a 7-month hiatus from rugby. The star winger Deontay was injured for a couple of weeks. He's now only coming back, and he came play Super Sport Rugby Challenge last week and is now in New Zealand. He's now in Wellington. So I think you got to look at the change in management and the bringing in of depth. I think is what Swayze is trying to do. Okay. You've also got to look at how he's adjusted his team and the positioning of his players to what Rassie wanted. I don't know if you noticed, but after Rassie went to on his nation tour to chat to the coaches, etc. After he went to Swayze, the very next match, Rohan Janssen van Rensburg was on the wing, and Franco Mostert was 7. And there seemed to be no real explanation other than the fact that that's where Rassie wants to look at putting them. So,
but can they win the title this year?
Realistically, I do not think they can outmuscle the Crusaders and the Hurricanes. I think this weekend it'll show that the Hurricanes are truly the best team in the competition. But regardless of the fact that Crusaders might be on top, the Hurricanes, with the likes of the Barrett brothers, the Saviers, Arsenal, Mape, they are a
shields,
and yeah, they are just a massively talented unit. And I personally think it's going to be Hurricanes title this year.
Well, at this stage, it does seem as though that Washington-based Test match will go ahead, the Boks against Wales, with the England Test series to come. Steve, there has been talk about naming a proverbial A and B side, and sort of resting Rassie Erasmus, resting his big names for that Welsh Test match. Is that the way to go?
An A and B side I don't think is ideal, but two squads for the first 2 weeks is definitely, I think, the way to go. I think because Rassie has said in the beginning that just like England, just like Wales, they're going to experiment in that Welsh Test. They're not going to go out there with the tried and tested combinations and the ones that he knows are going to do well. He's going to see, okay, maybe and Janssen van Rensburg in the centres haven't played together before. Let's see how they go. Or maybe try out for Milan as captain, for example. Personally, what I would do if I was in Rassie's position is I would choose I think he can do this, a massive 40-man squad for the entire series, but only take 23 people, only 23 that are going to be playing on the day to Washington, and play the likes of Vermeulen, maybe make him captain for that match, if he is fit enough and ready to play. And then maybe look at Pollard at 12. Because I personally think Pollard is at 12. But that being said, if you're going to play Pollard at 12, you have to play him against England. Because then you'll have Pollard versus Farrell. Because there's not a chance in hell that Farrell's not going to start at 12.
Although Eddie Jones would say he might rest his line.
He did, but he said he's going to rest some of them, not all of them.
Okay.
So I don't think he can leave out Farrell. Apart from Farrell, there's no one else that can kick really except for Ford, and Ford hasn't been firing. I don't know who they would use. I don't know who their backup flyers would be anyway. I can't see a standout in the English class. So Farrell is going to be there. They're probably going to leave Youngs at home. They're probably going to leave. I think they might take Itoje. He's with the youngster in the team who wants to prove himself. But they're going to leave Joseph behind. They're going to leave. They're going to leave Rob Shaw behind. They'll keep Hartley because he's their captain. But
I think Hartley's been ruled out.
Has he been ruled out? Okay, I wasn't aware of that. Okay, so Hartley's been ruled out. So then it is going to be a weaker England side. So I think they can afford to, for the first test, for the Welsh test and then the first England test, have 2 weakened sides but not B sides. Because also at international level, there shouldn't be such a thing as a B side. Look at New Zealand. There is no such thing as a B side in New Zealand, and we need to get to that point where any combination of players is an A side.
Start channeling that mindset.
Yeah.
Steve, at lock, there's tons of competition for that Springbok berth. Arthur Snyman has been a standout for the Bulls this year, but he may not get a look in. So good is that competition. Which second rows would you select for that England Test series?
For England, I would look at starting Ep2 and du Toit together. I personally do not believe that du Toit is a number 7. I don't think he plays well at 7 as a 7. He plays 7 like he plays a lock, I feel. And I think he would work well with in the number 5. And then on your bench, I think Mostert has proven that he's versatile enough to play 7 if need be, but we don't necessarily want to put him there. He's also been playing very well for a very poor performing Lions side. He's one of the players that consistently puts it out there and is usually there's not a flaw in his game. Dark horses, I would say, would be the likes of Ludiaga and Ron Buerta from Buerta. I don't see Snyman getting in because he only seems to work well with his locking partner, with Diaga. And if Diaga is not one of your first choices, I don't see how, because I feel that Diaga works better, well, works well with or without Snyman, whereas Snyman has only really seemed to find his form when Diaga found his form. And that, you can just look at that one try, that lock try, that 15-meter lock try from the ball a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, well, maybe that's
it was all Diaga.
A good lock pairing to start against Wales.
And that would be my idea as well. Start Diaga and Snyman, maybe blood Snyman in, because Diaga's got that test experience. Yeah. Snyman doesn't really. Yeah. So that would be a good lock pairing for that Wales test.
Well, Garfield, sticking with the forwards here, Malcolm Marx has all but wrapped up the Bulk number 2 jersey. There's been talk about Adrian Strauss coming out of retirement, possibly in a mentorship capacity off the bench. But there's been talk of Bismarck du Plessis coming back from Montpellier for this England Test series. What do you think about all that?
Well, Mr. Shaun, as you just mentioned, I strongly believe that they shouldn't bring back Adrian Strauss per se, and rather bring back Bismarck du Plessis actually. Since if you look at the way Malcolm Marx plays, as well as Bismarck, they play the same type of rugby, that hardcore fetcher type of rugby. And since Bismarck and Malcolm basically are in relation in terms of positioning, then that is the mentoring partnership you want. But then the thing is also the team, the match won't be won just by the 15 men on the field. So since Bismarck will be on the bench, then also we'll have the likes of Aka van der Merwe in the squad, who will also learn from both, since he also came from the Lions. He just left to go to the Sharks, who he has been playing some exceptional rugby, showing that he too deserves to be in the number 2 jersey. It's just that he's been in the shadow of a beastly performing Malcolm Marx. So that's why I believe that it's Bismarck du Plessis mentoring Malcolm Marx.
Well, scrum off is an obvious problem area for the Boks. I want to ask both of you, Garfield, who to pick against England?
Well, for me, I believe in a long-standing recipe that works, because if we look at the Springboks, we don't have that depth capacity of scrum halves like the rest of the world does, and we can't play that type of box-kicking rugby that is...
Since Farid April.
Exactly. So what I believe is that we can bring back the likes of Rowan Pienaar. His experience and his understanding of playing under Fourie du Preez will prove to be a great learning curve for the likes of a young Faf de Klerk who's full of energy, wants to prove something, but then that over-eagerness overshadows his judgment on the field. So with the likes of a Rowan Pienaar, who's there to help him with that, to keep his composure, because Faf de Klerk is an exceptional scrum half, but it's just that his over-eagerness sometimes gets the better of him.
Makes mistakes.
Yes. Yeah. So a calmer, more relaxed, more experienced Rowan Pienaar, who will be playing the role of a Fourie du Preez, such as he did in the 2015 Rugby World Cup for the Springboks. He stepped up, led the Boks as captain, and then he brought them to a 3rd place playoff and a medal, which surprised everyone, because not for once did I imagine that Fourie du Preez would be playing in another World Cup just so soon. So
absolutely.
That's all we need, that experience and then depth growing for the future.
Absolutely. Steve, you were shaking your head at the ruined Pienaar comment.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Garfield said, except for the player that he thinks will provide that. Purely because Pienaar was the understudy to Du Preez for a reason, and I think he's past the point where he can be useful.
He hasn't played very well for Montpellier.
He has, but you've got to look at longevity,
Yes.
and you're looking at 2019 as well. You can't just look at the England series. And yes, Pienaar could maybe play against England pretty well, great. Maybe mentor in de Klerk, Khanyile, Papier, etc., etc. But I will highly doubt if he can make up to the 2019 World Cup in Japan. But a player that I think can would be Kubas-Reina. And although he doesn't have the experience of Pienaar, he's got that calm head, and he's also got he's also used to playing against the European sides. I might not like Reina, and I never have, but I do think he will bring value to a box side that is struggling at 9. And he's also got a good number of playing years left in him, and I think he can make the World Cup. Whether or not he's your first choice, 9, I think is debatable, but I do think he should definitely have a look in.
Was it 2014 when he was the incumbent at 9 and the Henneke? He played really well in those wet conditions.
Exactly.
Scored a try against Italy.
Yeah, he does have the experience in those weather conditions,
yes,
in the Northern Hemisphere.
And he would have only improved. Steve, you haven't spoken about overseas-based Boks. Rassie Erasmus has stressed that he will look at more overseas options. For you, who in a Springbok starting lineup, if you had to then decide tomorrow, which overseas-based players would be in the squad?
Starting lineup.
Starting lineup.
None.
None.
In the starting lineup,
Frans Steyn, Jan Serfontein.
Serfontein has been ruled out. He's injured.
Yes.
And Frans Steyn, I feel at this point would be better suited to a benching position, because he can cover every position in the back line effectively. If not directly, he'll push somebody to the wing or whatever, or to scrum half. So I think Frans Steyn was best suited in that utility back role on the bench. I think that the South African franchises have the depth in all of the positions, except for maybe scrum half. So obviously, I think Reina would then be my starting scrum half. But yeah, I don't see any potential starters overseas at the moment. Either they're too experienced and won't make a full 60, or they're too inexperienced and you wouldn't want to start them straight away. For example, Ruan Ackerman to me has got to be somewhere in that squad. Likewise, Faf de Klerk.
Over Jean-Luc du Preez, Ackerman.
Not over, as well as.
Okay.
Maybe over Dan du Preez.
Yes. Okay.
But I would like to. But you also got to remember that Ackerman can also play lock. So you can maybe bring him in as a sort of more mobile lock,
yes,
if you want to put it that way.
So that's why I would have Ackerman in the squad. I just say you have to have Frans Steyn in the squad. Ideally, you want to start him in a couple of games a bit later, but right now you'd want him on the bench, and you'd want him to also bring in the youngsters. So you'd want to blood in the. I mean, Yankees has had a couple of years at it. I don't think he's been as bad as everyone's been pointing out.
He hasn't been too good.
He hasn't been great, but he hasn't been the worst performing fly-off in Springbok history. I know that for a fact. You also got to remember that Yankees is also a confidence player. So if the team isn't playing well, he's not going to kick well. He's not going to be. He's a confidence player. So he's still technically a youngster, and with Steyn there to help mentor him and bring him up, and the likes of Cohen Bosch and Damian Willems, even Pollard can learn a hell of a lot from the likes of Steyn, who won a World Cup at the age of 18. You want Steyn in there for that. I think you also need to look at Juan de Jong. He is also he's very experienced for his age.
He's been to the Rio Olympics.
Been to Olympics, been to World Cups. He's been in various different competitions and various different finals of those competitions. He's relatively, I wouldn't say he's young, but he still has years left in him. He's I think he's what, 32?
Must be
31, 32. And he'll also bring in that mentorship for Khanyile. And
yes, absolutely.
Billy
LaRue?
I don't think LaRue has a place for 3 reasons. Warwick Gallant, Rowan Combrink, and his own ability to get in his own head. Much like Yankees is a confidence player, but unlike Yankees, if he makes one mistake, that is, if he passes a little bit too low in the first 5 minutes and the ball gets knocked on by the person he's passed to, that's him done. His day is ruined. He cannot get himself back into the groove. Whereas Yankees sometimes can shake it off if the team around him starts bringing it back. LaRue might be the best thing in a fullback jersey when he's on form and when he hasn't made that error in the first half. The fact that at any point you can make that simple error and then cost the game is an issue. And as well, you want Gallant as your fullback, and you want Combrink there at your wing, but you also want Nkosi, and you also want Deante, and you also want Tambo, and you also want. So we're lucky in that we've got that back 3 sorted. We've got so much depth now in our back 3, which we didn't have 2 years ago. And that's why I think, especially if you're looking at transformation purposes as well, you don't want to bring in Billy LaRue when Warwick Gallant and
Tambo is based locally.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, guys, thanks. That's all we have time for. Really appreciate your thoughts, your comments. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Take care.